Welcome to the kitchen table where the champions of all budget decks battle it out in the gauntlet for bragging rights and most of all for your viewing pleasure. You can also join in the fun and win some prizes like the secret lair. The only thing you need to do is to predict who the winner will be of the next match and leave it in the comments below. This match is between the Bouncing Otters and the Sphinxes. Bram, what do these decks have in store for us?
The Bouncing Otters is a mono blue control deck that has one purpose and one purpose only: to bounce the lands of your opponent and to lock them out of the game. And when your opponent then is sitting with a lot of cards in hand, you will use some Otters to slowly bite away at the life total of your opponent, and meanwhile you are drawing some more bounce spells. The deck also has a little bit of counter spells and some card draw. This Sphinx tribal deck is a mid-range deck with a lot of flying Sphinxes. The deck takes some time to get started, but when it does, all those Sphinxes are extremely powerful. Although it is a mid-range deck, it plays a little bit of the blue-white control shell with some counter spells and some card draw.
I'm going with the underdog. Go Otters!
Fight! Ladies and gentlemen, we are on our way. Sphinxes versus Bouncing Otters, and the Sphinxes have a fairly good hand with two Sphinxes, and especially the Gylf Keeper is a very good card against the Otters. Now let's look at the hand of the Otters. I see a capsize, I also see a lot of land, but with some card draw and a cycle land, I think this hand is keepable. The Sphinxes will start with an island, and that will be followed by an island by the Otters. Next, a Castle Vantress for the Sphinxes, and meanwhile the Otters are cycling a Lonely Sandbar, drawing an extra card, drawing an Otter, playing a land, and back to the Sphinxes now. They will follow up with another land and they will pass the turn. Now normally we would see a bounce spell by the Otters, but there's no 2-drop bounce spell. There will be an Everdream, another land is drawn, and the Otters only have one bounce spell. So will they decide to bounce a land or will they play an Otter? It will be an Otter. So we're going to see a different strategy from the Otters, more a tempo match. Drawing cards with the Otter, trying to bounce the Sphinxes that are coming into play and leaving the lands alone because they didn't have enough bounce spells in their opening hands. And now there will be a capsize on the Sphinx so the Otter can attack. 2 damage and a card is drawn. Another land. There's still one bounce spell in the hand of the Otters. Now the 5th land for the Sphinxes. Let's see what they do. Are they going to get rid of the Otter? Yes, Detention Sphere on the Otter. So back to the Otters now. How will this game play out? I'm really curious to see. The draw is another Otter, so that's a good thing because the Otters are not playing a lot of creatures. Only Otters, or almost only Otters. So now the question is, what will be the follow-up play? There's also an Icy Manipulator in the hand of the Otters. And that will be the play. So the Icy Manipulator can tap lands and creatures. Back to the Sphinxes, but in their upkeep they will tap a land. But the Sphinxes now still have 5 land for the Gylf Keeper, and that's a really good card against the Otters. Because you have to target it twice to return it to the hand of the Sphinxes. So the Otters now have a big problem. It's also a 4-turn clock. And they will try to race it with an Otter. And also a Jace's Archivist. Now the Otters also have a Lutri in hand. And now we go back to the Sphinxes. And let's see what they do. 6 mana is a Dream Eater. That's a 4/3 with flash. But it's played in the main phase and it will bounce the Ice Manipulator, and then also we will surveil, meaning the Sphinxes will look at the top 4 cards of their library and decide which cards stay back on top or which cards go to the graveyard. I see a Sphinx's Revelation, I also see a Monastery Siege, and the other cards go to the graveyard. So now more Sphinxes on the board, and I think we'll get an attack. The Gilf Keeper deals 5 damage. And now we go back to the Otters. They will bounce the Dream Eater, taking a land back that they will play again. So they have 4 more mana open. Attack by the Otters and the Archivist, and they draw a Dictate of Kruvix. The draw is Monastery Siege for the Sphinxes, and normally you would play this drawing an extra card and discarding a card, but it also has another option that could make it more expensive for the Otters to target the permanents of the Sphinxes, and that's already difficult with the Gilf Keeper. So it's looking not that great for the Otters. Can they get out of this difficult situation that the Sphinxes are creating? Building a dam looks like an easier task than getting out of this situation. Sphinxes just attacked with the Gilf Keeper, putting the Otters on 10. And here is the follow-up play by the Sphinxes. It's going to be a Monastery Siege, of course, another annoying card for the Otters, because the Sphinxes will choose dragons. So all bounce spells will cost 2 more for the Otters. And let's see, they still will play Lutri at the end of turn. And then they will have 7 power on the board. Can the Otters outrace the Sphinxes? With some bounce spells, it might be possible. Sphinx is on 7 now, and the Otters still have mana open. Will the evil tempo plan of the Otters work? Looks like it. Let's see. Back to Mr. Sphinx. They draw a Sphinx's Revelation. That's a pretty useful card, because there would be 7 lethal damage coming on the next turn. So a lethal Otter attack is avoided. And the Otters do have all their mana open. So is the Gilf Keeper going to stay on defense? Monastery Siege makes it impossible for the Otters to get rid of the Gilf Keeper, because of the extra 2 mana that needs to be paid. So the Sphinxes know that. But still, there is a Sphinx's Revelation. So the Sphinxes need more lands and also more life. They get both. Also another Sphinx and a Signet in hand. And now the Otters are at 5. And it's going to be hard. Because of the Monastery Siege. Who would have thought this card would have such a big impact on the match? Let's see if the Otters find a way out. They will consign to Dream, returning the Monastery Siege back to the Sphinx's hand, cycle a land and draw another card. It's another Lonely Sandbar. And then the Sphinx player needs to discard. And then we go back to the Otters, who now have a clear path for an attack. But the Sphinxes, they are not at 7 anymore, they are now at 10. And there's still a Gilf Keeper there that could attack for lethal on the way back. So we'll have an attack with 2 Sphinxes. Putting the Sphinx player at 5, drawing a card from the Otter. And now there is a Eye to Nowhere that automatically gets countered. but then the second spell doesn't get countered, and that's a boomerang. So now a boomerang will target the Guild Keeper, returning it to its owner's hand. And then there's still the Jace's Archivist. And there's also a Lonely Sandbar that is now coming into play tapped. What are those Otters up to? A tapped Jace's Archivist means that all players need to discard their hand, and they both draw cards equal to the highest number of cards discarded. That's 8 cards. And most importantly, both the Monastery Siege and the Guild Keeper have been discarded. So this could be the opening the Otters were waiting for, because they still have 3 creatures on the board. And now it's back to the Sphinxes, but we see they have drawn a Day of Judgment. And that will be Judgment for the Otters, who still have 1 mana left. And that they will still use for the Elixir of Immortality. The end of their turn. We keep it casual, so that's okay. But there will be some bad news now for the Sphinxes. They found the opening, but luck was not on the side of the Otters. And the Sphinxes, they now have a powerful spell to play, a destructive spell to cast. Here we go, here is Day of Judgment. And what looked so nice for the Otters now looks grim. Because the Otter player doesn't have too many creatures, and bouncing lands is out of the question now. They're just too many. And there is a Maze Mind Tome for the intellectual Sphinxes, getting some knowledge out of this weird book. And now we go back to the Otter side. Can they reconstruct the dam? Can they rebuild? Another bounce spell is the draw. Do our friends have an Otter plan? There is still 1 furry creature trapped in the detention sphere. Let's see what's going to happen. First, a Mystic Sanctuary. That will mean we'll get an instant or sorcery and put it on top. It will be a Capsize for some ultimate bouncing abilities. And now, just to pass the turn, back to the Sphinxes, who will look in their book first. They will draw a card, and it's an Arcane Denial, a powerful counter spell. A typical blue-white control spell in this mid-range Sphinx deck. Another land is drawn. That will be a most welcome addition to the pile of mana that is already in the hands of the Sphinxes. And now we're going to see maybe one of the most powerful Sphinxes ever printed. The Sphinx player is preparing to cast Dream Trawler. But wait, the Otters have a response to it. They are tapping mana, they are tapping 5 mana to be exact. Condenscent, it will counter the Dream Trawler. But there is 2 mana tapped. And the counterspell will be Arcane Denialed. But the Otters will respond to that by condescending the Arcane Denial. It's a counter war like only blue decks can do. And the Otters will take the upper hand. Dream Trawler hits the graveyard. The Sphinxes were denied their lethal turn. Now what is the Sphinx player doing? She's putting the Dream Trawler back into her hand. That's a little bit of a mistake. We will attribute this to the excitement of the counter wars, but we'll make sure that the card will be in the correct pile. Maze Mind Taupe is crying because the Otters just passed the turn to see what the Sphinxes are up to. Now the Dream Trawler has been placed in the correct graveyard, not in the hand. And there's been another card drawn by the Maze Mind Tome. Now the only Sphinxes that the Sphinx player has in hand are tokens, which are bounce bait for the Otters. So let's see what's going to happen. There are not a lot of plays for the Sphinxes. And now the Otters, they can bounce something. What will it be? Will it be the Maze Mine Tome? No, it will be the Detention Sphere. And that will mean there is an Otter back on the loose. The Thieving Otter. And now the Elixir of Immortality is getting sacrificed. That means 5 life. And also all the other cards are being shuffled back from the graveyard into the library of the Otters. And then still a Dictate of Krufix for the extra draw. In the draw phase of the Otters, they now draw 2 cards. We see an Icy Manipulator. There is an attack, but wait, says the Sphinx player. It's not because I don't do anything. I can't prevent your Otters from attacking. It's being warranted to go back to the top of the library. And that was the only creature in the hand of the Otters. What now? What now? Can we bounce a Maze Mine Tome? We'll play an Icy Manipulator. And then we'll have 4 mana left. We see a Boomerang, a Regress, Capsize. Only bounce spells now in the hand of the Bouncing Otters. And then we go back to the Sphinxes, who now also will draw 2 cards. And it's 2 Sphinxes. 2 threats for the Sphinx player to put the pressure onto the Otters. And no counters for the Otters. Sphinx player is inspecting her graveyard to see which instants or sorceries are in there. And that's because of course there's a Scholar of the Lost Trove. And when it enters the battlefield, you can cast a Dismantling Blow for free on the Icy Manipulator. The Otters say, I don't want to have that. I will reskin it. I will get it back to my hand to save the Icy Manipulator. And I will still also gain the additional 5 life from the Elixir of Immortality. And the Sphinxes, they will cast another Sphinx to put the pressure onto the Otters. Here is the Sphinx of Foresight. It's a 4/4 for 4 mana, of course, with flying. Meanwhile, the Sphinxes have looked into their Book of Brains. It is the last counter to put on the book. It's now being exiled. Sphinxes gain 4 life and they scry another big Sphinx on top of their library. Cards have been drawn. I see an Otter, but I also see 2 Sphinxes at the other side. So what will be the play of the Otters? They're going to recast their Icy Manipulator. And then maybe bounce one of the Sphinxes. No, they're going to play an Otter. They still think they have a way out of it. They still think they can get the card advantage. They still believe in rebuilding the dam. But now we will have some Sphinxes at work. 2 Sphinxes are on the battlefield. And the Sphinx player is tapping more mana. She is tapping 6 mana for Azor the Lawbringer, preventing the Sphinxes to play instants and sorceries on their next turn. There is also a Detention Sphere on the Icy Manipulator. It will still tap the biggest Sphinx before it's detained. And now the attack from the Sphinx, 4 points of damage. And now we go back to the land of the Otters. It all looked so nice, it all looked so rosy when they got rid of the Gilf Keeper. But now a lot of big Sphinxes have joined the party, especially Azor is a problem. It's also a 6/6 flying, so that could be lethal. Now back to the Sphinxes. The Otters couldn't play any sorceries on their turn because of Azor. So no extra bouncing for 2 mana. Now it's still possible to bounce everything this turn. And we'll see that this probably is going to happen. Regress on the big Sphinx. And then another regress on Azor. And let's see if the last Sphinx comes through. Yes, Otters go to 2. And they leave 3 mana open for a last bounce spell. But the Sphinxes meanwhile also have drawn Unesh, Cryo Sphinx Sovereign. That makes all other Sphinxes cost 2 less. And it's also a mini fact or fiction, because we now reveal the top 4 cards. And the Otters need to make 2 separate piles. The Sphinxes can then choose 1 pile. And I see the dreaded counterspell as an option. And that will be probably the option to take. Yes, it will be the counterspell. Sphinxes still have a lot of mana open. Azor is re-entering the battlefield. Sphinxes are forgetting the Unesh trigger. That would allow for another fact or fiction. Maybe they can't take the stress anymore. And let's see what the Otters are doing now. They can play 1 instant. It's going to be a capsize on the Icy Manipulator. But wait, there is the counter spell.
Nope.
Of course. They're now tapped out. Otters needs to draw something. It's a land and a Jace's Archivist. I don't think that will be enough. This is a problem. And back to the Sphinxes, who now have the final blow to deliver to the Otters. Eye of Nowhere couldn't be cast. Otters could only bounce 2 creatures now. And that means lethal damage will come through. The Sphinxes keep it casual. They are still going to durdle around a little bit. They're going to add insult to injury, because the Otters know they're dead. Of course, they're also bluffing that there's a way out, but they know there's no way out. And there's a big Scholar of the Lost Trove coming now for only 5 mana. There we go. An instant sorcery or artifact card may be cast. It will be another Sphinx from Warden, a Sphinx token. Why? Just to have more Sphinxes at the sidelines to watch the carnage unfold. To have more facts or fictions being played. The Sphinx is even going to kill the remaining Otter, turn them into stone. They're now extinct. And then they're going to attack for lethal, finishing off this really exciting game. Some Sphinxes still are bounced back, but the Otters are just missing that one last land to capsize twice and to send the Sphinxes back.
Game over.
Oh, too bad. Just a quarter of a point in the leaderboard for me.
Now you can join our leaderboard too by predicting who will be the winner of the next match and leave it in the comments below. And maybe you can win a secret lair or one of our 3 special boosters. Now if you want some more information about the tournament series, check out the link here. If you need some help predicting who will be the winner of the next match, check out the deck tech videos. And remember,
always keep it casual.